Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast. I'm John Borton, and we're here with the video edition. And we are here with our man from East Lansing, the one and only Tom Crawford, who has been keeping his finger on the pulse of all Michigan sports, as he always does, but also certainly tuned into Michigan's exit from the NCAA men's basketball tournament. We have other teams that are still going. We'll definitely talk about them. But first of all, welcome back, Mr. Crawford. And I got to say, leading into you speaking about this men's basketball exit, this was a game against Villanova that it looked like Michigan could and possibly should have won.
They could and should have won, indeed, John. And I'm glad we do this podcast. 4 days removed, so I can absorb everything, get emotion out of it, and look at things with a clear mind. And first of all, I think this season was a good season. It was a successful season because everything is so contingent on a national perspective. If you get to that second weekend, if you get to the Sweet 16, you get a ton of exposure, a ton. Based on the fact you're barely into the tournament and all that, and the controversy in that, and the Wisconsin game which you won, that all of a sudden is now back in the light after Will Smith's behavior at the Oscars. Now everybody talking about Juwan Howard again. I mean, you can't get rid of that. But my point is, this is a good year, and I feel really good about this basketball program and Juwan Howard heading this program as good as I ever have. And it was a land of missed opportunities. So I can't get the 12 of 29 at the rim out of my mind in terms of missed opportunity. Michigan, schematically, strategically, was in preparation and was there to win this basketball game. And when you combine the start of it with a missed free throw opportunities against a fundamentally sound, good, seasoned team, well-coached team by Jay Wright, man, I'm still banging my head against the wall. They should be in the final. And I think they could have beaten Houston, to be honest with you, because they could be in the Final Four. They could be in New Orleans with all the blue bloods, including themselves.
Yeah, and here's the weird thing. I get that Villanova is very sound and very good defensively, and they push you off your spot just enough, and they speed you up a little on offense because of that pressure defense. But I hear Jay Wright saying, "Yeah, we did what we wanted to do defensively and push Hunter Dickinson out just far enough so that maybe he wasn't as comfortable and those kinds of things." And I hear Juwan Howard saying, "We were pleased with what we got offensively. We could have done better in that area." And I think there's maybe some truth to both of those, but it sure did look after that man, you got to make the shots and you gotta take advantage of your opportunities when you have them. That said, I think Villanova, except for one very difficult injury, could just about beat anybody and still could win this thing.
Yeah, the Justin Moore injury on Saturday, or yes, was that Saturday? Everything's a blur. Was heart wrenching, and so he's gone, and so that knocks their chances of beating Kansas down quite a bit in that first semifinal. But I go back, and I've talked about the missed free throws and the misses at the rim. But I thought the entry passes were not very good, and then also Musa Diabate. Okay, everybody says, "Oh, he's just gonna be a one and done." Boy, I'm telling you, I'm flat out. He is not ready. I mean, he can't hold on to the basketball in congested situations many times. He didn't have a good game at all. I don't think he's ready. I think with Caleb coming back and Musa coming back, those two, if that happens, which I think it will, the potential of improvement is off the scale. The raw talent is there. But what Caleb Houston goes, he offers that he doesn't score in the win over Tennessee, and then he jumps out of the gate. Good, we got the 5 quick ones, the 3 and the 2, that slash on that reverse layup, and they got the 3, and then all of a sudden he shut out the rest of the game. If you had told me, and this goes back to if you had told me that out of shooting forward, Caleb Houston was going to get 5 points in those two games, that they weren't going to win those two games. They won one of them, but there's a lot of improvement to be made. A lot of great offseason play. As far as talent wise, needs to be enhanced, and including several players. T. Will could improve a great deal. Obviously, Frankie Collins could improve a great deal. A lot of upside coming down, but missed opportunities. Oh God! Now I'm all bummed out again.
That's worked
Thanks,
up. Okay.
Don.
As long as your anxiety level is slightly elevated anyway, tell me what the anxiety meter says about the possibility of a Caleb Houston or a Musa Diabate, despite the fact that they have had pretty up and down freshman seasons overall. Deciding that, you know what, my potential is such that somebody might take me. I'm going to check this thing out NBA wise.
Well, you can do the check the thing out. I don't care about that. I mean, like Hunter did last year. If you want to check it out, check it out. And what that does is it puts your program in a bind with the portal and everything, because you don't know, you're giving all this uncertainty to your head coach. I don't know if I'm leaving, and you might go as late as June, and so it's like book an airline booking a plane. You only have so many seats, and you have to fill those seats, right? And that's why basketball with the transfer portal it's a hot mess as far as how you're going to orchestrate your personnel. I mean, I know Michigan's looking at this kid out of Texas Tech. They want to, go after him. I mean, I don't know how they do it. I mean, football is bad. Basketball, there's smaller amounts of available seats. You got 13 scholarships, whatever, 15 guys on your roster. Wow. I mean, it would be insane if Caleb Houston thought he's going to get drafted in the NBA. He's not going to get drafted. Musa Diabate, I don't think is going to get drafted. And I don't even think Hunter Dickinson's going to get drafted. Will he go? Probably, but he could use another year. He didn't have he didn't crush it. I mean, he played good in games 1 and 2, but in games 3, when smaller guys were, mucking up the situation for him down low, it took him 16 shots to get 15 points. Not good. So they all could benefit from coming back.
All right. Well, let me circle back to one thing that you just touched on, and that I find to be so true about college basketball these days, major college basketball, is the fact that the weight that can be carried by 2 wins, and Michigan got those 2 wins. All credit. Colorado State, Tennessee. You're in the Sweet 16. Suddenly, you've saved the season. Suddenly, it is a successful season. It's a Sweet 16 team. Looking forward to next year. Obviously, a learning year this year. Had young guys, all that kind of thing. You dial it back to just a week earlier, a little more than a week earlier. You've got a team that has played itself out of the Big Ten tournament in one game. You've got a team that had its coach on suspension for 5 games. You have people screaming that no way in the world this team deserves to be in the NCAA tournament. And it's just a season that really is not a successful season by any measure. And then you win 2 games, and it is in such a, I mean, that everybody agrees it is. You're one of the last 2 Big Ten teams standing. It just shows you the power of the NCAA tournament, and the power of having even a modicum of success in that tournament.
You said it back. The power of the NCAA tournament. I mean, when you look at TV ratings, let me give you, all those college football bowl games that some of us diehards watch. I mean, some of those mid-range bowl games like the Sun Bowl outdrew in viewership the highest rated college basketball regular season game. Okay, because college basketball's regular season is almost a niche sport. You're kind of just watching it, waiting to see who's in, and all of a sudden Lenardi comes out, who's in, who's out. Then it starts to pick up momentum. The college basketball is virtually a one event sport. It's the NCAA tournament. That's when it gets its magnitude. That's when teams like St. Peter's are on to, becoming newsmakers, and that's when it gets its 3 week time. But before that, it's I'm not saying it's an irrelevant sport, but it's a very fragmented sport in terms of awareness. So yeah, all of a sudden, all is good if you do well. If you get out of that first weekend in the NCAA tournament, it means everything. I mean, I feel better. I mean, I'm sure there's Michigan fans who feel better about their program than Iowa, who won the Big Ten tournament, was the hottest team that came out and lost. I had them in. I had them win the national championship. How stupid is that? Um,
Mm.
that's how stupid I am. But and they lose to Richmond in the first game. I mean, that's what defines you. It's sad. It's unfair, but that's reality.
Yeah, I threw that out on our message board. What means more to you, going farther in the NCAA tournament or actually winning the Big Ten? And in basketball these days, you're going to have a lot of people take the former. Say, look, I'd rather make the Sweet 16 than win the Big Ten, and that's interesting in itself because you do a lot of hard work and a lot of good things over the long haul to hang a Big Ten championship banner, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I go back. My one of my podcast partners, Richard Relford, two-time Big Ten champion, '85 and '86. I mean, they had great teams. They were Big Ten champs back-to-back years. And what does everybody think about when those two teams? They think about they didn't get out of the first weekend. They didn't play well in week number one, in the game number one, over Fairleigh Dickinson and Akron, respectively. And then they lost to Villanova and Iowa State, respectively. Villanova winning on win the national championship. But that's what they think of when they think of '85, '86, a team that fell short, not the Big Ten titles. And that's pretty sad to me. But that's the way. And that's when the tournament meant even less than it does now. Now the tournament is totally like 90% of college basketball.
No doubt, the mega tournaments, and you certainly. I know that Kim Barnes Arico and her women's team is still feeling very excited about what they've got going. Advanced to the Elite Eight for the first time in program history. And I'll tell you what, that's a great achievement for that group, Naz Hillman and the whole crowd. It's something that I saw a lot of years when I first was starting with the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine.com, where women's basketball really, really struggled and wasn't something that a lot of people paid attention to. This team's drawing more and more crowds and more interest, and congratulations certainly to them on taking the next step.
Yeah, Kim's done a great job. I mean, relative up here, Joanne P. McCauley and Susie Merchant had the better program at Michigan State in women's, and now Michigan is taken. They've forged ahead in that, and I thought that was a great win over South Dakota. I mean, that gym, I think it was in Wichita. I mean, that was packed with those Coyote fans,
Hmm.
and I mean that was like a road game. And South Dakota, they knocked off Baylor. I mean, they did some good deeds for Michigan, but Michigan held their poise, got the big bucket down the stretch. That was a huge win for the program. Maybe a little daunting tonight, taking on Louisville because they got blown out before, but who knows? But you get to the Elite Eight. This all ties into this the golden years, the maze years of Michigan athletics. This academic calendar in athletics, John, you and I have talked about it last week, with hockey making the Frozen Four, holding on. My word, what a year that Michigan has had athletically, and we're not even talking about the football. Got to the CFP and won the Big Ten title. So that used to be the weak link. Good in every sport.
No doubt about it. You talk about Mel Pearson's hockey team. Oh my word! Uh, you want to go for a ride? You make sure you see that the replay if you didn't see it live last night, and they go into the final period up 4-0, allow 3 goals. They're hanging on, then get 2 open netters and give one back, and it was the craziest third period, one of the ones that I've ever seen.
Yeah, pulling the goalie at Quinnipiac at 4 minute mark. It's like, okay, this works.
Yeah.
And Michigan took advantage of it. I mean, it's like basketball. We complain about, hey, that's Michigan basketball team can't put together a full 40. Well, this hockey team, the Minnesota game is an example of that, has struggled with a full 60-minute output. They got some time to shore that up defensively later stages of the game when they take on Denver. Then the winner, Minnesota State. I mean, that's tough stuff ahead of them. But man, to get back to the Frozen Four is just awesome for Mel
No doubt
Pearson's
about
team.
it. Yep, and we were talking about the power of two wins. They're two wins away from a national championship, and that would be a fantastic achievement for a longtime assistant, but a relatively new head coach at Michigan. For Mel and his crew, wish them all the best. Uh, and then we've got the spring game coming up. We're going to
Yes.
talk next week much more about football, but just in closing, what is it about football and this spring that has most caught your attention?
Well, and I haven't, been down at practice, and I haven't, I've watched some of the pressers in replay. I haven't been down to A Square for those press conferences, and I'm looking forward to being down there for the spring game and then the post game presser, which I'm sure the coordinators will kind of oversee that versus Harbaugh. All I'm hearing is, things are pulling together nicely. Positivity. I think there's a lot to be said momentum wise. I always say if you drop your bowl game, that can hurt momentum. I don't think that was the situation this year because they were Big Ten champions. They got the Ohio State bugaboo off their back. They finally beat Ohio State. I think there's some solid momentum going into next year, and I think there'll be a decent amount of people showing up at the spring game. It's going to be 46 degrees. And just look at the weather. That's all. That's all right for April 2nd, long as it's dry. So I think all things are good for Michigan football, and also I think it also generates momentum. John, is the fact that I think this tango bit with Harbaugh in the NFL is over with, and I think the stellar, this coaching staff is solid with the new additions at OC and DC. That's merging together. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any different look at the spring game. And from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to be an actual spring game, like dividing the teams, like back in the '70s and '80s. Is that true?
Well, if they're talking actual spring game, there's always modifications and always ways that they shorten it up and make
Yeah.
sure that guys they're not going to lose guys on the last day of spring practice. But I think it's going to have a lot of game elements to it. So I'm interested to see how that comes out. And you're right on as far as the coordinators. They did an excellent job just when it looked like, oh, everything's upheaval and everything's going to change. They did an excellent job of making sure that there's a continuity there, and the defense is going to stay largely the same, and the offense is going to tap into the guys that had so much input on an offense that ran the heck over Ohio State. So I think that given what could have been in terms of upset and upheaval, it's going to be certainly you're going to have to replace personnel, but in terms of scheme, it's not going to be some big dramatic difference. And when you're coming off a Big Ten championship, that's a really good thing.
Yeah, and that's why I think this. I know this whole thing with Harbaugh doing the tango with the Minnesota Vikings that has like, God, is this going to happen every year? I think the way it ended up, and I think he's done with that thing. I mean, that whole flirtation thing is over, and he got the continuity like you talked about on both sides of the ball. Can you imagine if a new coaching regime came in here? I don't care who it was. You're in that transition mode. You got to get a transfer portal thing. Is going to be it's going to be going off the scale, and then you have to have a new learn with scheme on both sides of the ball. Don't have that. Don't have that at all. And I think the confidence that you can beat Ohio State. And I know you like that early schedule. We'll talk about that next week. I like to poke at that schedule again next week.
Sure. Yeah,
There's some upside. They can get their reps in, and they can get the rhythm going before they make that daunting task to Iowa City in that first road game.
you got it. We'll talk all about that and more next week. Tom Crawford, as usual, fantastic job. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, John. I think Wolverines. I think Maize and Blue every week of the year, and appreciate you having me on the podcast with you.